Before we get into today's video, I want to welcome our newest subscriber, Martine Palinki. Palinki? Palissi? I don't remember how to pronounce that last name. I do apologize, Martine. Either way, welcome to the family. Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drayhon, and welcome back to Dungeons & Dragons Character Concept, where we take a look at the races within Dungeons & Dragons and see what backgrounds and classes best fit those races based off of their lore. Today we are doing the Plasmoids, which were introduced in the Spelljammer setting that was released just recently as of today's video. Now, I must admit, I kind of like the Plasmoids. They're pretty good. Not my favorites, but they're pretty good. As far as the lore goes, according to 2nd edition, there are 3 sub-races. And that they have a natural enemy known as the Berber. Now, as far as these sub-races go, we have the Deglish, Delnoric, and Ontalak. Other than that, these races don't really have much in the lore department, which is very, very unfortunate. As far as character combinations go, background-wise, I would say the Far Traveler, Fisher, Sailor, and Shipwright would be the most common as of the Spelljammer setting. Though, if you were to go to other settings, I'm sure you'd be able to find some better options. For classes, while all classes are viable here, I would say the most common would be the Fighter, Monk, and Rogue, especially if you're going off of certain class features. And like I said, the lore department isn't really that rich. Their sub-races was the only thing I really got out of them. That, and supposedly, they have origins in oozes and slimes, which makes sense since they are an ooze race. But nothing to really suggest any good lore. Even in the newest Spelljammer setting, the lore department is very, very lacking. All we know is what we're able to do with them as playable characters. That's it. But I am going to try my very hardest to find good class options for a Plasmoid character. Now, before we dive on in, let me just clarify that you do not have to follow this video to the letter. These are simply guides for when you run out of ideas and just want a generic character. Just something generic for one of the races. So, let's go ahead and dive a little deeper into this shallow slime pool. First things first, I want to go ahead and bring up the Artificer, more specifically the Alchemist Artificer. This is mostly just a reference to Magic the Gathering and the Semic Conclave, as they have a few cards that have oozes as, well, characters. The most prominent ones being the Prime Speaker Venifar and Experiment 1, who are ooze hybrids. Which, admittingly, isn't really much, but that is the best I got for you as far as that goes. Moving on to Cleric, there are actually two options that I think are viable. The Demon Lord Jublex, aka Donagauer, would be the Cleric domain of war. And secondly, in the world of Eberron, you have, well, technically, one of the other oozes is the Ooblex, which were created supposedly by Mind Flayers. So, the Eberron's Mind Flayer leader, Dern, would be a good god, quote-unquote, to follow, making you the Mind Domain Cleric. And that's really just a stretch. Like I said, there's really no lore to go off of here. Honestly, I think that Wizards of the Coast found my videos and are trying to make it a lot harder for me to make these videos. That's a joke. Don't bash Wizards of the Coast for not implementing lore. It is a joke, a very bad joke. Don't do anything drastic here, okay? It's just a joke. I highly doubt that Wizards of the Coast actually watches my videos. Anyway, let's stop this and move on. Next is the Druid. This is probably the least likely class to pick for your Plasmoid, but I thought I'd mention it anyway, as there are two decent options. The Circle of the Land Druid, more specifically Underdark, and the Spore Circle. I picked Spore because of the slime mold, which you can see over here on the right side of your screen. Slime mold, or slime mold, is an informal name given to several kinds of unrelated eukaryotic organisms with a life cycle that includes a free-living single-cell stage and the formation of spores. So, yeah, that was my inspiration for that, is slime mold. Well, that's really it as far as Druids go. And really, that just seemed a little funny to do that. Moving on to the fighter. Really, this is another basic thing. I threw in everything that was basic about the fighter that can be used for any race. The Battlemaster, the Cavalier, the Champion. I even threw in the Gunslinger and Renegade just to have something on this list. I picked Gunslinger and Renegade because of the fact that Spelljammer does in fact have guns. So, yeah, I thought it'd be nice to include that. Even some of the art for the Plasmoids has them with a blaster of some kind. So it sort of made sense. The Renegade can be found in the partner book Tides of Bilgewater, the Runeterra book. Another martial archetype I thought would be decent would be the Psi Warrior, again referencing the Oblex. Moving on to Monk. Now, Monk would actually be perfect for a Plasmoid simply because one of its mechanics allows you to squeeze through a 1-inch space so long as you are not wearing or carrying anything. So, it makes sense to have a monk who has unarmored defense and unarmed strikes. For the monastic traditions, I thought the Astral Self, 4 elements, living weapon, long death, mercy, and open hand would fit rather well with the Plasmoid. The living weapon monastic tradition can be found in Exploring Eberron. the book made by Keith Baker, the creator of Eberron Rising from the Last War. Official material that people don't consider official material. Anyway, moving on, we have Ranger. This one was a stretch. A really far stretch. But I did get two conclaves that sort of made sense. Horizon Walker and Swarm Keeper. Horizon Walker simply for the fact that this is a Spelljammer setting, and you are technically fighting intergalactic threats. So it sort of made sense. For Swarm Keeper, this was mostly another joke. You attract more flies with honey. Have a Plasmoid who is sentient blob of honey. Would be hilarious. That's really it for the Swarm Keeper, though. I am just throwing stuff against a wall like MatPat is trying to get a theory. Moving on to Rogue. The only two that really made sense are Assassin and Soul Knife. Really, I can just once again see the Oblex here for the Soul Knife, but also the fact that you generate these psionic blades and you can throw them. To me, that sounds like you are hardening your plasma, your ooze, and throwing your ooze at an enemy, causing it to deal damage. Kind of like an ice blade, which I think is hilarious, but very thematic. Moving on to the Sorcerer, once again going off of the Oblex, the origins of the Aberrant Mind makes the most sense. Secondly, going into the Divine Soul, going off of the god Drublex, aka Donegal. Also, Shadow Magic, but this is another Oblex reference. Not for the fact that it's connected to the Shadowfell. Oblex aren't connected to the Shadowfell. It is one of the abilities of Shadow Magic, the Hound of Ill Omen, that references the Oblex. You summon a Shadow Hound. You summon an extension of yourself. That's what Oblex do. It makes the most sense in my opinion, but it's just a vague reference. Again, throwing stuff against a wall. And finally, the Warlock, patron of the Fiend and Great Old One, makes the most sense. Once again, referencing Joblex and Dern. I would go for a wizard, but in all honesty, that's a bad idea. The only other piece of lore that I can give you, which is hilarious, is a famous Plasmoid that got so bored while on his Spelljammer that he absent-mindedly ate the wood of his ship. And the end of that story was, this is why elves do not allow Plasmoids on their ships. Just the only piece of lore that's really any use is a Plasmoid absent-mindedly eating his own ship. What the flip? Anyway, dear viewers, that's all the time I have for you today. I do hope that you enjoyed, at the very least, the lack of lore that I had for you today. I want to know what type of Plasmoid character you would create in the comment section down below, since I really didn't have much to go off of. And with that, this has been Drehan, and I am offline.